Easter Sunday in 1975 started off as a normal Easter holiday for the Ruppert family, but soon turned into a nightmare that is now dubbed as the deadliest family massacre in American history. Stay tuned as we uncover how a seemingly harmless man managed to murder 11 members of his family. James Urban Ruppert was born on March 29, 1934, to his mother Charity and father Leonard Ruppert. He, along with his older brother, Leonard Jr., grew up in Hamilton, Ohio. However, their small family was far from normal, as Leonard Sr., who was known to have a violent temper, made his children's childhood traumatic. To make matters worse, Charity picked her favorites when the boys were still young, always favoring her brighter and more confident older child, Leonard, over her younger son. James grew up in a hostile environment and was often told by his mother that she wished he was never born since she wanted a daughter in his place. As expected from a child who grew up without parental affection, this negatively impacted Ruppert's self-confidence, and he grew up to become a loner. His parents' carelessness constantly cost him, including his father's insistence on keeping chickens around their house, causing him to develop an allergy to the feathers. Despite his allergy, his parents showed little to no concern for his well-being as they continued to keep the chickens around. When Ruppert turned 12 in 1947, his father became deathly ill and soon died of tuberculosis. However, his days of torment were far from over as his older brother quickly took over their father's role and went out of his way to harass his younger brother. As a result, Ruppert's performance in school was severely lacking as compared to his brother. With no friends to offer him any support, Ruppert found himself dealing with everything on his own as Charity continued to ignore his existence. The constant bullying at home and school got so bad that at the age of 16, Ruppert decided to end things once and for all. He took sheets from his home and tried to hang himself. However, he failed to succeed in his suicidal attempt. This marked an important event in Ruppert's life, as he stopped making any effort towards improving his life and accepted his fate as the inferior son. This became Ruppert's first and only suicide attempt. Not surprisingly, Ruppert grew to hate both his brother and mother. By the time he reached college, he stood at 5 feet 6 inches and only weighed 135 pounds. He spent 2 years in college before giving up on it as well, while his brother once again surpassed him and graduated with a degree in electrical engineering. It helped that Leonard Jr. had his mother's full support. His resentment towards his brother grew to a dangerous level when Leonard Jr. married one of Ruppert's former girlfriends, named Alma, a girl that he never lost feelings for. This would later be cited as a motive for his rampage. Ruppert began to feel as if the entire world was against him and resigned himself to an unremarkable life, accepting defeat. He trained to become a draftsman, but remained unemployed for the majority of his life, leaving him with no choice but to continue living with his mother, often borrowing money from her and Leonard Jr. While his brother not only managed to get a job with General Electric, he also bought a house in Fairfield where he lived with Alma and their 8 children, 17-year-old Leonard III, 16-year-old Michael, 15-year-old Thomas, 13-year-old Carol, 12-year-old Anne, 11-years-old David, 9-year-old Teresa, and 4-year-old John. Perhaps because he was so frustrated with his life, Ruppert developed an affinity for guns. Among his collection, he had a .357 Magnum, 2 .22 handguns, and a .22 rifle. 2 things became ritual for Ruppert: drinking and target practicing. Ruppert had turned to drinking to deal with the toxic environment at home, as well as to numb his feelings of inferiority. As he got older and remained unemployed, Charity, tired of his drinking, threatened to evict him unless he paid rent. However, since he had lost all of his money during the stock market crash of 1973 to 1974, Ruppert had no way to pay his portion of the rent. Although Charity intended for this threat to motivate him to get his life back on track, she unknowingly pushed him towards his breaking point. As the threat of eviction loomed over his head, Ruppert began to approach his breaking point. While purchasing ammunition one day, he inquired about silencers but did not end up going through with the purchase. On March 29, 1975, Ruppert turned 41. On his birthday, he was seen at the Great Miami River in Hamilton shooting cans, and this became pivotal in helping the prosecution build their case against him. It can be argued that he was possibly preparing for one of the deadliest nights in Hamilton, Ohio. That night, Ruppert stumbled into a bar called the 19th Hole Cocktail Lounge. He met 28-year-old mother of 5, Wanda Bishop, who worked at the cocktail lounge, and confessed that his mother was threatening to evict him if he failed to find a job to pay for his portion of the rent. Charity had told him that if he could afford to pay for his drinks, he could pay her rent as well. Wanda recalled that Ruppert insisted that he had to find a way to solve the problem. Ruppert stayed in the cocktail lounge until 11 p.m. before leaving, but soon returned and continued drinking until the lounge closed at 2:30 a.m. When Wanda asked him if he had managed to resolve his problem, Ruppert replied, "No, not yet." The next morning, Charity, who was not feeling well, called Leonard Jr. and his family for Easter dinner, instead of an early lunch at their house, 635 Minor Avenue. Once Leonard Jr. and Alma arrived, their children participated in an Easter egg hunt outside, while Ruppert slept in late, nursing a hangover from the previous night. By the time he got up at 4 p.m., everyone had moved inside to continue the celebration, while Charity prepared sloppy joes for the family, and Alma helped put them together. Ruppert stayed with the family for a short while before returning upstairs to retrieve a .357 Magnum, 222 handguns, and a rifle. He intended to head to a shooting range to spend his day, but as he was leaving, his brother asked him, "How's the Volkswagen?" Ruppert took this as an insult, as Leonard Jr.'s comments reminded him of his own failure to lead a successful life like his brother. Instead of leaving for the shooting range as planned, Ruppert made a split-second decision that not only altered the trajectory of his life forever, but also robbed 11 people of their lives. At 6 p.m., Charity, Leonard, Alma, their son David, and daughters Tessa and Carol, who were in the kitchen, became Ruppert's first victims as he fired off several shots in rapid succession, hitting all of them in the chest, except for his mother, whom he shot in the head as she jumped at him to try and prevent him from killing anyone else. He then moved to the living room where he shot his niece Anne, Leonard III, Michael, and John. After his initial shots, Ruppert went around and shot everyone several more times to make sure that they were dead.
After the initial shooting, and if people were moaning and groaning still, he shot them in the head.
The entire ordeal took less than 5 minutes, with Ruppert only stopping in the middle to reload. All in all, he fired 44 shots, out of which 40 hit the victims. After making sure that everyone was dead, Ruppert sat with his family's dead bodies for 3 hours, contemplating suicide, but decided that since it was a mortal sin, he did not want it to be his last act. After 3 hours, he decided to make a 911 call. He told the 911 dispatcher that there has been a shooting.
As his relatives took their last breaths around him, Ruppert sat on the couch. He waited there for 3 to 4 hours before he called police to tell them someone's been shot.
When officers arrived at the scene a few minutes later, Ruppert greeted them at the front door. At first glance, the officers did not suspect that anything sinister was waiting for them beyond the front door, since Ruppert, with his short stature and thick black-framed glasses, did not fit into the usual description of a murderer. As the officers entered the house, they were in for the shock of a lifetime. One of the responding officers also reported that he had never seen anything like the crime scene before him, and that he had to rush to the side to throw up. There was so much blood on the floors that it had seeped through the wooden floorboards and was dripping into the basement. There was no sign of struggle inside the house except for an overturned trash can, indicating that because the family had not expected this, they did not have enough time to react. As the Hamilton Police Department was made aware of the shocking discovery, they immediately covered the area with police tape as people began to gather around. the small community that had known the Ruppert family as a loving family was taken by surprise at the tragedy, and was even more horrified to find that the helpful and modest man they had known their whole lives was behind the murders. The first body to leave the house was of little John, with his sneaker peeking out of the sheet drawn over him. Dread began to fill everyone as one by one, 11 stretchers were brought out of the house, all carrying the now dead members of the Ruppert family.
The site was in 2 rooms of a modest 2-story Hamilton home where James Ruppert lived with his mother. In 2 rooms, 11 bodies, including Ruppert's mother, Ruppert's brother, his brother's wife, and their 8 children, the oldest 17, the youngest a 4-year-old boy.
Ruppert was arrested on the counts of 11 aggravated homicides. Despite being known as a demure but helpful man, Ruppert remained uncooperative with the officers and refused to answer any of their questions. Investigators struggled to find a motive since the suspect in custody refused to say anything. During the initial questioning, it was made clear by Ruppert that he planned on pleading insanity. The prosecutors believed that Ruppert planned on taking advantage of the $300,000 worth of inheritance left by both his brother and mother in the form of their properties and assets. By pleading guilty, he would serve time at a court-appointed facility before being released and getting hold of the inheritance. This case led to 2 high-profile trials. During the initial trial, Ruppert admitted to killing his family, but pleaded innocent by reason of insanity. Ruppert was represented by Hugh D. Holbrook, who became so dedicated to the case that he even personally funded the hiring of psychiatrists and psychologists from all over the country to testify in favor of Ruppert's insanity plea. 2 psychiatrists who were brought on by his defense team concluded that Ruppert suffered from paranoia and delusions of persecution that were brought on by the beatings he had endured during his early life at the hands of his brother. This is why, they argued, he had been unable to control his actions at the time of the crime. Harvard University psychiatrist Dr. Lester Grinspoon supplied his expert opinion, claiming that if more people were present in the house, Ruppert might have killed them as well, pushing the narrative that Ruppert did not have a solid motive other than insanity.
After the slaughter, James Ruppert changed his clothes and called the cops. He was charged and tried for 11 murders. His attorneys said he killed during a psychotic rage. They said he was insane.
Along those same lines, Doctor, isn't it true that you have no way of telling the court what Mr. Ruppert's ability to rationally discuss the case with his attorneys, to rationally assist in the preparation of a defense would be if he were not under the effect of either a major tranquilizer such as Thorazine or Trilofan at this time? Isn't that right?
I have no specific way of telling that other than to say that during the course of my examination with him, he was able at that time and under that condition with that dosage of medication to rationally confer with me and talk to me about what had happened.
At the same time, the prosecution argued that Ruppert planned to misuse the insanity plea to inherit the $300,000 inheritance.
He murdered his family to collect his brother's $300,000 or so in life insurance. That's what I think. It's what I think the evidence showed, and that's what I believe.
Instead of having his case presented in front of a jury, Ruppert decided to have his case tried in front of 3 judges. However, he was incorrectly told that all 3 of the judges would have to agree unanimously on a decision. 2 out of the 3 judges found Ruppert sane and convicted him on 11 counts of aggravated murder. He was sentenced to serve 11 consecutive life sentences. During 1975, the United States had banned the death penalty, saving Ruppert from being given a death sentence. The 3rd Hamilton County Judge, Fred Kramer, however, found Ruppert insane. Between the years 1977 and 1978, the Supreme Court of Ohio ruled that there had been a mistrial since the judges did not know whether they needed to unanimously agree on a decision or have a majority rule. Ruppert was granted another trial that was determined to be held in Findlay, Ohio, since it was deemed that he could not receive a fair trial in the city of Hamilton. On July 23, 1975, the new trial began, where Ruppert and his defense team once again argued for the insanity plea. However, the prosecution led by John Holcomb brought forward 29 witnesses and presented 200 exhibits in court, successfully building a different line of reasoning. He argued that his inquiry into the silencers, practicing his shooting, and talking about his mother as a problem that needed to be resolved were all pointing towards the fact that this mass murder was a carefully plotted crime, especially given the fact that the shooting had been carried out at a time when the church bells had begun ringing, hence drowning out the noise from the gunshots, preventing anyone from calling the authorities. He went on to say that Ruppert planned on aiming for the insanity plea because that would ensure that he would be sent to the Lima, a state mental hospital where he would eventually be declared sane. This would allow him to easily inherit the $300,000 worth of inheritance left behind by Leonard and Charity, which he would not be able to do if he was convicted of murder. Based on the prosecution's convincing argument, Ruppert was once again sentenced to 11 consecutive life sentences. A few years later, in 1982, on appeal, Ruppert was granted another trial, where his defense attorney was able to convince the jury to grant him an insanity plea. Ruppert was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder for his brother and mother, but found not guilty for the remaining 9 counts of murder by reason of insanity. The only family member to attend the trial was Alma's mother, Edna Allgaier. She blamed Ruppert for 13 deaths, including her husband, who took his own life 3 years after the incident on Easter Day, as well as a juror who collapsed during the trial and died of a heart attack. When Edna passed away, her headstone proclaimed that she was preceded by 8 grandchildren. At the age of 48, Ruppert was incarcerated by the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Correction at the Franklin Medical Center in Columbus. 13 years later, at the age of 61, Ruppert was granted another parole hearing by the State Parole Board, but was denied release. He was granted 2 more parole hearings, one in 2005 and another one in 2015. During all of these parole hearings, he was denied release. During his last hearing in 2015, the Allen Oakwood Correctional Institutional Parole Board released a statement that indicated that Ruppert was not suitable for release due to his negative institutional conduct, as well as a strong community objection to his release. 7 years later, Ruppert died at the age of 88 of natural causes, having spent 47 years in prison.
A man who shot and killed 11 family members on Easter 1975 has died. James Ruppert died over the weekend at Franklin Medical Center in Columbus at the age of 88. The Hamilton Journal-News says that he died of natural causes.
The Ruppert family was buried in Arlington Memorial Garden in Cincinnati, Ohio. A year after the heinous mass murder, the house was opened up to the public. The Ruppert family's belongings were auctioned off, and the hardwood floors were covered with a carpet in places where bloodstains were harder to remove. The house was rented to a family who was unaware of the house's history. As soon as they found out, they moved out, complaining of hearing strange voices and other unexplained noises. To this day, the house remains occupied. Even today, the Easter Sunday Massacre is remembered as one of the deadliest family massacres in America. A book called The Easter Sunday Massacre, A Prosecutor's Diary, The True Story of Mass Murderer James Ruppert, written by the lead prosecutor John's daughter-in-law, Karen Holcomb, was published with the help of his notes left behind after his death.
Karen Holcomb first became familiar with this case in the 1990s when she was a reporter for the Journal-News. She didn't know at the time that her coverage would lead to her marrying the prosecutor's son and decades later taking her late father-in-law's words and crafting them into a book that details the trauma left behind after this tragedy.
What did you think of the case? Do you think Ruppert was eligible for the insanity plea? Or do you think that this was an elaborate plan that he had come up with after deciding that he was finally done accepting the abuse he had endured his entire life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you want more videos like this, please be sure to like the video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on more true crime videos. See you in the next one.